Welcome to Wealthy Mind, where we talk about all things finances, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the surprising. Welcome to Wealthy Mind. I am your host, Misty Rose Gold, International Success Coach, and today I have with me Doug Marsh. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Misty.
How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Awesome. Did you have a good day?
Oh, busy day. There have been a lot of different matters going on today. I've been hopping around from one thing to another thing, but been a productive day, just very busy.
That's good. Is there ever not a busy day in an attorney's life?
There are not busy days in an attorney's life. There's no real regular pattern to when disputes come up. It's sometimes things happen, sometimes they don't. You never know when a case is going to proceed all the way to trial versus when something's going to settle very quickly. So it can be very sporadic, very hit or miss, very cyclical in nature, where you can have really high days and really low days. And these days, we're in a bit of a high cycle where things aren't getting resolved as quickly as a lot of people would like, including the clients. So yeah, there's a premium on time these days, but
Okay.
it evens out. 3 weeks from now, I'll find myself in a low cycle, or who knows when, and looking back fondly at when I had all these other things to do. You can either panic that you're busy, or you can panic that you're not, or you can just not panic.
Right. I mean, I take the third option. Let's not panic because that's not productive. But that blows up the assumption that attorneys are always busy. So thank you for destroying that assumption.
Well, they certainly can be, and goodness knows if you're not busy with active cases, you ought to be busy with generating new matters and
Hmm.
developing more business. So there's always something that you can kick off of the back burner, but
Hmm.
there are definitely high moments and low moments in terms of
Okay.
how many things are going on, how busy you are.
Will you tell us what type of lawyer you are?
Sure. So we specialize in commercial litigation,
Hmm.
which is a really multi-syllabic way of saying people fight over money. I always tell people, if you're fighting over money, we can probably help. We
Okay.
do a lot of uh, dispute resolution among partners and coworkers, colleagues within existing
Hmm.
businesses. So two owners of a company fighting over control over the company, lots of disputes between companies, vendors, customers. Somebody's contractual obligations aren't being complied with. Somebody owes money and hasn't paid. You were supposed to have done something, you didn't. Uh, Ranging as broad as HOA dispute litigation, where the association should have done something or the homeowner needed to have repaired something, all kinds of issues that fall within that broad range of issues that we help to resolve. Our goal is to help people ultimately identify, avoid, and then resolve these business disputes so they can get back to doing what they want to be doing, which is not fighting. So
Sure.
and so to that end, we specialize in dispute resolution, and our
Hmm.
bread and butter is we're in the courtroom arguing over the case that's presently before the court and the judge.
Hmm.
We've seen enough of these cases go bad that we know what good ones look like. And
Uh-huh.
so we also do what we can to help clients avoid the courtroom in the first place. And that
Mm.
includes getting your documents lined up, making sure that people have the right expectations of what they need to be doing, what you're going to be doing, uh, and having things arranged so that ideally the disputes never come up. But if they do come
Sure.
up, you're at least prepared to be able to address them.
Sure. So you guys cover the front end and the back end. So making sure proper documentation is in place and then you handle disputes if and when they come up.
Sure. So I was looking over our collections for the last month, and the median invoice was just a couple $100, a couple of hours
Mm,
of work. We were looking over documents and patching up contracts, things like that. The median dollar is litigation, where you're actively involved in the courtroom. So
mhm.
more of our money comes from litigation, where
Sure.
you're actively involved in the dispute. But more of our clients are these smaller matters of let's just make sure the documents are patched up and trying to stay out of the courtroom in the first place.
Hmm.
Just to show that old saying, a stitch in time, saving nine, we see that all over in our litigation practice. If you've taken the time to avoid this in the first place, then it saves a lot of time, money, and heartbreak down the road.
All right, that works. So let's save the documentation part of what you do for another episode. Today, I would like to talk about family matters when people go into business together and their family members. What do you see in that space?
Oh, you see everything in that space. And one of the things that makes things complicated in litigation, we have clients that are very objective. It's just a matter of money. And when you
Mhm,
evaluate the worth of a case, you'll just go to an Excel spreadsheet. You'll punch in some numbers. And if a cell turns out green, it means this case is worth it. Go ahead. And if the cell
mhm,
turns out red, it's not really worth it. Let's back out of this and get this thing resolved. But then you have cases that get emotional because
mhm,
it's not just about dollars and cents, it's about right and wrong and how dare they do this to me? And I'm going to show them.
mhm.
Boy, those cases just
Ugh.
get so messy.
Yeah,
Family cases are among the worst of them
okay.
because you get some really deep-seated feelings and emotions that
Mhm,
get wrapped up in this case where people are they really struggle to make objective decisions and look at things from a dispassionate lens.
mhm.
So family matters can be very, very complicated and frankly expensive because there
Okay,
comes a point where it's not just about what's the best way forward for me for my business. There are just all kinds of other issues that get wrapped up that you have to sort out too, and boy, it makes it messy. It
sure.
can make it
So
messy.
if someone is going into business with a family member, what kind of agreements do they need in place? What kind of documentation do they need in place just in case? Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's my brother, no big deal, we're good. We don't need any of that mess. But you're telling us otherwise, right?
I'm telling you, it certainly can be otherwise. The most important thing that any business owner needs to understand is the importance of set expectations.
Mm,
Nothing contributes to disputes and litigations and fights more than unmet expectations. Somebody thought
mhm,
that this was the way things were going to go, and it turns out that that's not how things were going to go.
mhm,
Either misunderstanding or things just didn't happen the way they thought they would. So from the outset, it's really important to make sure people's expectations are set and you know what's going to happen. And that doesn't mean that in every case you need to have a 300-page contract outlining every possible contingency or variable. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm
mhm,
saying is you do need to plan for likely possibilities and know what happens if things don't go the way that you were hoping for. Uh,
mhm,
Many people that I know will say one of two things when it comes to family and business.
mhm.
One, don't. They'll just say, no, I will not do that because of the potential for danger here. Or
Sure.
they will say, two, I'm willing to do that, but every dollar that I give to a family member is a dollar that may not come back to me, and I'm just going to live with that. I understand
Mm,
that I might lose it, and that's that. It's as good as a gift. If they pay back, wonderful, but I will have zero expectation of that dollar ever coming back. And that's an extreme position. There's some logic to it, though. The fact of the matter is businesses fail fairly frequently. Most
right.
businesses end up having some kind of adverse outcome. And
Mhm.
family, in theory, ought to last longer than business. And
It
so
should.
it certainly should. So uh, if you're not wise about that and open to that possibility, recognizing that that's how things may play out, then when bad things happen on the business side, it can affect the family side. So you
Mhm.
have to make sure that you recognize one of those things in theory should last forever. The other may last as long as it's mutually beneficial for a business transaction. And so it's not an unwise position to say either it would just be better to stay out of this altogether and not get family and business mixed up, or
Mhm.
recognizing that the potential for loss does not outweigh the potential for damage for my family relationships. So if I am going to get involved in this, uh, this is as good as a gift. I may not ever get this back, and I simply cannot allow that to affect my relationship with brother, sister, sibling, parent, whatever it is. That's one way to approach it. And again, there's some
Mhm.
wisdom in that. Reality, too, though, is when you're starting a business, you're looking for assets to help you get launched, you're looking for seed money, and
Mhm.
you look for people that know you and trust you. And family is an obvious first place to go. And if you
Right.
were to say to everybody out there, just simply never do business with family, there's a lot of business that would never happen because people can't
Yeah,
get around.
it's
So
true.
practical reality is there will be family and business together. There's nothing wrong with family and business together
Mhm.
as long as you make sure you understand there are risks involved in any business venture. Relationships go south in any business venture, and you need to make sure that you prioritize the family relationships so that they do not become casualties of a business that goes south.
Now, it makes sense to me that people would implement the proper agreements and defining their roles and making sure they have all of that documentation to protect the relationships. Isn't that something that you would use to protect them?
It does, and it does make sense. Here's one of the problems that comes up, though, when you mix business with family, and you mentioned it a little while ago. Oh,
Mhm.
this is my brother. I mean, we were raised together. I would trust him with my life. We don't need to have this formal, big, long contract written out. He's looking out for me, and I know that, and I trust him.
Mhm.
That's what I refer to as the first paragraph of the judicial decision. So you read these cases, and they always start off with this introductory paragraph. This person and that person and got along great, had this business, the prologue of the story.
Mhm.
The second paragraph, the third paragraph is where things start to turn south.
Okay.
They always do. So that line of, well, geez, this is my brother. We trust each other. Yeah, that's the first paragraph of the decision. The second and third paragraph is going to be coming up in just a bit. Uh,
Mm.
it's it's risky. You're leaving a ton undone. You're leaving expectations unsettled, and who knows if you're actually on the same page.
Mhm.
So if it's important that you have a relationship that endures beyond what may happen with this business, as is true of family, then it's even more important to make sure that those expectations are settled, that you know what each person is contributing, what everybody is entitled to, what they're getting out
Mhm.
of this, their respective rights, what happens if there's a dispute, what if I don't agree with what they're doing, what if I want out, what if I want to buy them out. All of these things ought to be considered in advance because once you're in the
Yeah.
heat of the moment, now it's starting to get expensive. And again, once you're adverse, dispute resolution becomes a lot more expensive than dispute avoidance would have been if you had thought these things through in the beginning.
Sure. So listen up, people. Those of you who think that you can get away with not having the proper agreements in place when you're working with family, let's put them in place so that you can save the relationship because it's just cleaner. And I know from a psychological standpoint, some people will be concerned that, oh, if I make my brother sign this document, he's going to get mad at me. Well, I'd rather have him mad at me for 10 minutes in the beginning than for a lifetime on the back end because we got into a major conflict.
You know, it's a funny thing. People get in their car every day to drive to work. And
Mhm.
most of us, first thing we do is click our seatbelt. Are you planning on getting on an accident?
No.
Good work, then are you expecting to have the worst happen? No, you're not. In all likelihood, you're going to sail off to work and things will be just fine. But you need to be prepared for bad things that could happen.
Right.
And are you insulted as a driver if your passenger buckles their seatbelt? Like, no,
No.
it's what you do because things happen. It
Well,
may
my
not
car is insulted. It will stop beeping. It'll start beeping at them.
well, yeah, the car will get angry if you don't.
Yeah.
It'll do that. And it's really no different from the business perspective. When you get involved with business with somebody, the fact of the matter is sometimes businesses go south. Things happen. Not always is that the fault of one person or another. It may just be that you had this great idea about a product that was going to change the world and the demand just wasn't there. And there's
Right.
not as much money to go around as you thought there would be. Things happen and you need to be prepared for those eventualities. And
Mhm.
there's nothing at all wrong with planning for those and preparing for those.
Right.
It can be an uncomfortable conversation, though. I mean, if you talk with somebody about all the different ways that our relationship may go wrong, uh, yeah, that can be an uncomfortable conversation. I'll admit that. But
Yeah.
it's an important one to have. And having things set out from the beginning where everybody understands that this is the way things will go and you have your
Mhm.
expectations set will do so much to avoid conflict in the long run. It's a wise person who recognizes this conversation for what it is. It
Mhm.
is an act of respect and caring to the other person to say, let's make sure that we are both on the same page and that our respective rights are being understood and acknowledged by everybody.
Mhm. Yep, I love that. And your approach is proactive instead of reactive. And most people are reactive because they don't think big picture. They don't think 5 years ahead. They don't think, well, wow, what if this happens? And then, oh my God, the relationship is ruined for decades or a lifetime. They don't think about that, right? They have these little blinders on, and then, oh my God, these situations arise and they become reactive. I'm proactive. Like, that is one of the ways that I love to keep my life at an even keel and fulfilled for myself is to be proactive. I do not like being reactive. I don't like being reactive emotionally either. So thank you for being a proponent for proactivity.
Sure. And part of it too is the outside perspective. Somebody from an outside, the attorney who's not involved in that business,
Mhm.
can see things that maybe somebody who's on the inside doesn't see. Certainly, we
That's
have
because you're emotionally not involved.
we're emotionally not involved. We have
Right.
more experience. We've seen the ways that things can go wrong. I mean, there's nothing at all wrong with being optimistic. The reason that you're getting into this business is probably because you think it's going to work and you think that
Mhm.
there's potential and opportunity. So we are often hardwired to look for the good things. We want to be positive. We want to look for the best, and we want to strive for the best possible outcomes. All of those are good things. Uh, my practice is largely devoted to scraping up the little bits and pieces of people's lives once things go south. So
Mhm.
it's a lot easier for me to see the less optimistic view of things and the way that things can go wrong, uh,
Sure.
which is helpful for me when I'm trying to help you and your business to say, here are the things that you need to be aware of. Here are the potential downfalls. Uh, Here are the ways that we can help you avoid those problems.
Mhm. Well, thank you for bringing that perspective because I do that from a coaching perspective, but you're doing it from the legal perspective of, hey, I can see your roadblocks, I can see your pitfalls, and let me assist you in that space. And I really appreciate that you have this service for business owners, for whoever your clients are. I know that you cater to business owners and maybe some other demographics, but this is such a special service to have available because we don't know what we don't know. And people get emotionally wrapped up in decisions and outcomes, and they will trip over things where you're not emotionally connected to it. All of your expertise doing this for however many years you've been doing it can then show them, hey, this is why you need me as an advisor. I am your legal advisor.
Sure.
This
And
is why people need Misty as their coach, but this is why they need Doug.
sure.
Yes.
And, another big piece of it too, it's not just about pointing out all the ways that things can go wrong. It's also about how do we help you on the path to what you want to accomplish. So
Mm,
say you've got a business where parents are the owners, but they eventually envision handing the whole thing off to their children someday.
okay.
That's wonderful. That's a great vision. That gives you something to really work hard for. It's inspiring.
Mm,
How does that work exactly? Well, they're going to take over. Well, what does taking over mean? Are you leaving the company? Are you assigning duties? Are you transferring
mm,
ownership? Are you transferring management? Are you transferring all of your ownership, some of your ownership? Is this better thought of as a limited liability company where you're transferring a membership interest? Or are you just uh, making them owners and officers? How much interest gets transferred? I mean, what is your goal eventually? What do you hope to accomplish? And how can we help you set the structure up so that you can accomplish those goals? One of the things that lawyers often get a bad
mm.
rap for, but probably deserve it in a lot of ways, is we're the ones that come and kill the party atmosphere. Oh, we're going to have such a grand time. Oh, here's the lawyer to tell us all the reasons why we can't. It's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. And it's not just that, it's also a matter of helping you find your way to what you want to do with your
Mm,
business. And you may want to expand your family members' role. You may want to make sure that family members are being taken care of. That's all wonderful. Let me make sure
mm.
that those pieces are in place, not just so that you avoid the bad outcomes, but
Sure.
to help you actively make progress towards your desired outcomes.
I love that. So you can help business owners set up their legacy in that regard. So if their legacy is passing it on to a family member or a kid, hey, you can help them set up all the documentation for that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And, again, the whole point is what is it that you are out to accomplish?
Mm,
Some people, they want to be at their desk till their dying day because they just love their work so much. That's fine. Some people are counting the days until there's a certain number in their bank account. When they hit that number, they don't expect to be seen or heard from again.
they're out, they're gone.
That's fine too. So what happens to your business at that point? Is it fully turned over? Do you retain a membership interest? Do you retain an interest in the profits of the organization? Uh, all kinds of different ways to go about accomplishing it.
Mhm.
Not necessarily right answers, wrong answers here, better answers or more appropriate answers for your situation and what you are trying to accomplish. And let's just sit down and talk through what that means and what we need to do to help you structure your affairs accordingly and get you where you want to be.
Okay. So let's throw out a hypothetical. If a family or two brothers are going into business with each other and they have the common goal of selling the company in 5 years, 10 years, how do you help them in that process to set it up for a healthy exit?
One of the things I would be looking at very closely is the operating agreement between the members of that company. I'm assuming that what we're talking about is a limited liability company. If it's these two brothers, two members of the limited liability company, and I'm really giving close attention to the provisions about selling the company. I'm considering issues such as rights of first refusal. Hey, one person wants out and I've identified a buyer. Do you want to buy before I sell to this person? I'm looking at provisions like a forced sale, where
Mm,
maybe one person really wants out, but the other does not. What do you do in that situation? What if you have an offer that is really appealing to one person, but not to maybe other people? Or if you have multiple members and most of them are on board, but one of them is not. How are you facilitating that? How are you allowing the company to respond to those kinds of situations so that when the time comes to transfer it off, whether it's because you're selling or because one person's retiring or whatever the case may be, making sure that the organization is portable and can accommodate those situations as they come up.
Okay. And this brings up a point which I deal with in my coaching all the time is what are your goals? Are we all working toward the same goal? And really identifying that because it's important to do that in all types of relationships, be it professional or personal. Like, what is the goal for this personal relationship? Why are we here? It's even more important when you're looking at a long-term partnership with a spouse, let's say. So for you to come into the picture and be that legal advisor and say, hey, let me sit between the two brothers and mediate this conversation so then I can extract the common goal of the business, right? So, because one might have an idea and the other one might have a different idea. And that's very common. Like people get stuck on their own little path and they assume that the other person's on the same path, but they do not discuss it, right? So you can provide that type of a mediation, right?
They don't discuss it, and then they find out all too late that there are very different ideas about what's going to happen. I had one not terribly long ago where some family members were talking about, for example, an investment in real estate in Summit County. Oh, this is going to be great. We're going to have this property. It'll be wonderful. Well, one of them
Mm-hmm.
is thinking of this as a place for their family to go hang out during the summers. The other is thinking, no, we're mostly going to rent it out. One of them's thinking it's base camp from which we can do hiking, wilderness exploration. The other's thinking, no, this is going to be at the base of the resort, and this is ski in, ski out type terrain.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is thinking, this is going to be something that we have in the family for generations. Our grandchildren will play in this place. The other one's thinking, this is just a fantastic investment. And as soon as retirement time comes, we'll 1031 it into something else. And just the ideas were so disparate. They're just not on the same page,
Yeah.
just having the same goal, even though they walked into the room both thinking, hey, investment in Summit County, this is great. Well,
Okay.
in the conversation, you come to find out the views are very divergent. And you can either find ways to accommodate that and make sure that one person gives, another person settles so that you can eventually find yourself on the right page, or you do what is entirely appropriate and say, it turns out that this is not a good business fit after all. We
Mm-hmm.
better not try this. That
All
happens too.
right. So my advice would be the person that has the most wisdom that is hopefully listening to this episode will say, okay, I'm going into business with my brother. I'm going to have both of us sit down with the lawyer. But before I sit down with the lawyer, I'm going to prep the lawyer and say, hey, I'm uncomfortable talking about the long-term goals of this venture with my brother. Can you please help me with that conversation? So I see that as a beautiful way of you stepping into where, okay, this person is really uncomfortable with upsetting the boat with his brother, but you can do that. You're not emotionally attached to the situation. You're not the brother. So you're acting as like a buffer in that experience. So it's just, yeah. So for those of you who are thinking about going into business, please sit down with your attorney. If it's Doug, awesome. If it's another person, awesome. But please sit down with your attorney and have them mediate the conversation so that you guys have clear goals and clear defined roles and boundaries and all the things in place. Doug, we are coming to the end of our episode. Is there anything else that you want family members to know if they are going into business with each other or are in business with each other and something that they can put in place to help them prevent issues from the future?
Benjamin Franklin said it best about the ultimate business venture, marriage, and says, eyes wide open before, eyes half shut after. There's a lot
Mm,
of uh, forgiveness that you have to have after the relationship is formed to make sure things get along, but it is absolutely appropriate, and in fact, it's necessary to have your eyes wide open going into it. You need to think through the implications. You need to form good plans. You need to have those hard conversations. Uh, all of that should not be taken as a lack of trust or caring or empathy or pessimism about the business venture. It's none of those things. It's just prudence. it's wisdom. It's making sure that this thing has its best possible chance at succeeding, and that not only does the business itself have a great opportunity to thrive, but so too your family relationships, which in the end is the really important thing.
For sure. I love that. And you're setting people up for success in business and with their personal relationships. And that couldn't make me happier because that just makes the world a better place. So if people want to find you, what is the name of your practice and where can they find you?
So our firm is Cambridge Law. You'll find us at our website, which is cambridgelaw.com, and you'll see our contact information, phone number there. My phone number is 303-488-3338, and you'll be able to contact us either at that phone number or through the contact information on our website.
Excellent. And I know you're here in Colorado. If people are not located in Colorado, where else are you licensed to practice law?
So I'm licensed in Colorado. I'm also licensed in Utah and in the state of Illinois. If you need help in a state that I'm not licensed in, give me a call anyway. I'll see if I can't find somebody in my network that will be able to assist. I would, above all else, if you've got an issue that you think I can help out with, pick up the phone. We do free consultations. We love these introductory calls where I can hear about your issues and try to map out the best way to get you through them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the services that you provide, and thank you for being a wonderful guest on our podcast today.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yes, and I look forward to having you back. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Wealthy Mind podcast. Please be sure to download the Wealthy Mind app today and make sure to support your local Dress for Success.